All right. We are back at PJCon 2021. And this time, I've got a very special guest, a guy that I've gotten to know over the past couple of years who I'm going to make him blush because I'm going to call him my hero. But this is Ken Magerman. Ken, say hi. Make sure we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
It sounds good on my end, so that's the first step there.
That's, the beginning of the battle for sure.
So, Ken, you do a lot of things. For instance, how long have you been one half of Amaranth?
I mean, I brought Colin in later. I've been the whatever beginning of Amaranth. I think we started in probably 1996,
Yeah.
thereabouts. And Colin wasn't in it then. It was totally different people.
Mm-hmm.
But and then we walked away from that in, I don't know, probably 2005, and then started up again around 2018 with Colin, and then bringing back Josh, that was in an original Amaranth too.
Yeah. And so you've been involved with the goth industrial scene for a long time, but specifically what kind of we focus on today, because it's something that just keeps growing bigger and badder, is sounds and shadows. So, like, what is sounds and shadows for people that have been living under a rock and don't really know?
So I guess I describe originally Sounds and Shows as a music review page, and it started out. I went a long time in that vein, kind of around 2005, where I just kind of gave up on new music. I don't know if I was just being a pretentious goth snob or what have you, but I went through this. If it's not the Sisters of Mercy, it sucks, and kind of really just checked out of what was going on. And in 2000, yeah, around the time of Amaranth, there, 17 or 18, I took a trip to Athens, Greece with my partner, Rachel. And we went out there and I went to this club in Athens called Death Disco. And it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, I've been going to goth clubs this whole time and along the way, but it just reminded me of like City Club in Detroit back in the mid to late 90s, where there was just a lack of pretension. Everybody there is in like a black shirt and jeans, like not going over the top, but knew every song, jumped out on the dance floor for everything. And I heard a bunch of new goth music that night, and it just like opened my eyes again. And when I got home, I started just getting back in the scene deep and looking things up. And one of the first ones was Twin Tribes. And I just kind of randomly found them and listened to it and was just like, oh my God, where has this been? And so I got drunk one night and decided, what if I tried writing a music review of this? And I just did it on Facebook at first. And people really responded. And even the band, Luis and Joel, reached out to me and responded. And it was so cool to have that feeling of, connection and doing it again. So then I started doing more. And I did it just on Facebook for a while, but then after a while, it just grew and took a life of its own. So I got a web page and started soundsandshadows.com, where I would do written interviews and reviews of what I was listening to and the bands I were in. And again, it just kind of kept with this organic growth and this great feedback and feeling from a lot of bands that were saying, you know, I've missed music reviews like this. You really take time and dive deep and go into what you're hearing, and it's just not copy and paste of the band's bio. And it seemed like the world, especially in the scene, was really hungry for that. We used to have a lot of zines and things like that, and there aren't nearly as many as there could be now. And it is a lot of work. So I understand why not everybody wants to run out and do that. But to me, it just became incredibly rewarding and put me in contact with so many of these new bands I was really excited about. And then on top of that, bands that I grew up listening to and loving started joining in, and I started reviewing them too. And I just realized this goth renaissance was happening and this whole other world was out there. And then I started doing podcasts with it, and just audio interviews, and those went great. We started doing the video interviews and talking to bands, and it just kept spiraling and spiraling and getting bigger and bigger. And the Facebook algorithm sometimes is tough. Like, I have a Facebook page for Sounds and Shadows, but a lot of people weren't always seeing what I was putting on there unless you wanted to pay for it, because it's like a business page. So I started a Facebook group for Sounds and Shadows, kind of just thinking to myself, well, the people that are following the page would then be able to see the stuff that I'm posting all the time. But it's me, and I want to talk about stuff. So I started up conversations there. And because of the people that I know and the bands I know, some bigger name ones, some up and coming ones, people just started talking about everything going on in the music scene, promoting their projects, how they do their process, what gear they're using, buying and selling gear. And all of a sudden that took a life of its own and just became this wonderful, almost like a BBS message board. I don't know if you remember those, but back in the day, the old bulletin board systems, it kind of became a lot like that, and just a place for people, DJs, promoters, bands, and fans just to go and talk and discuss. And now I think we just hit like 3,000 followers in the group. But I think the biggest thing with the group is it's not just, I don't know, like, I see pages that have, 20,000 users, but 19,000 of them are inactive and don't really do anything. Whereas I feel like all 3,000 people there are talking and adding to the conversation all the time. And it's from all over the world and all different walks of life. That was a long-winded answer.
No, that was, but that's good because it gave me a lot to kind of hone in on. Um,
Yeah.
so it, I think that the thing is that your story there about how you got started is not really any different from anyone watching right now who's thinking, man, I want to be more active with my creative project. And basically it is, I have an urge to do something. And so the very first thing you did was you did the thing.
Right. That's the, yeah, the Stephen quote. But yeah, I mean, that's got to be step one, is you just got to put your toe in the water. And for me, I had no expectations going into it when I did it. I wasn't trying to think of this as a business long term, and I'm really still not. It's a hobby that I love that has become meaningful and taken on a life.
So I guess like you did the one thing. All right, you did your first interview. How hard was it, or not your first interview, your first review? How hard was it to do like the second and the third one, like to keep it going?
I think I got lucky
Okay.
that the first one that I did got some legs right off the bat. And it kind of just filled me up with energy. And the fact that Luis and Joel had reached out to me and said, wow, like, we're wondering, whether we're actually serious about this or what's going to happen with this band, and hearing that it seemed like you really got it. Like, that's just a feeling that immediately filled me up, where I felt like I had a stake in that, a piece of it.
Hold up,
And
hold up. Twin Tribes, like a band that is definitely on the who's list of this goth renaissance that
sure,
you're
now,
talking about, actually said
yeah.
to you like we weren't even sure we were going to keep this going until your review.
Yeah, it wasn't so much, that we keep this going, although I have had bands say that to me, which is amazing, like the feeling that is. But for them, it was more, they were just starting out in it.
Yeah.
They weren't who they are now. They were just on a beginning upward trajectory. And they just said, when you did that review, Ken, it wasn't so much that their popularity they had in question, because that was starting to happen. It was more, you really took the time to hear us. And that made this review meaningful to us. And that was the feeling that it was, is just that I was listening and giving something to a band that gave something to me.
So it sounds
And
like. Oh,
their
go ahead.
album there, where, sorry, why I got the name Sounds and Shadows, that's partially from them. Their first album is called Shadows, and that's kind of part of what was spinning in my head when I named it.
Well, thanks, Twin Tribes. Then, yeah. Like, so what I'm getting out of this then is that you kind of did something that mattered to you, and you put it out there, and what kind of gave you that that push to go forward was that it then mattered to other people as well, but not in the whole like I'm popular sort of way, but you got to talk about your output with somebody.
Yeah, I think it was a lot that, and more just the fact of hearing from them or actors, or Crooks Lies, a lot of these bands in the beginning when I started it, that it mattered to them. A lot of times I think we don't think about the fact that some of these bigger name bands, why would they care about the fact that I'm a fan or that I'm hearing it? They're them, right? And I think that was one of the things I learned early on, is that they have just the same. Everybody I've ever talked to, from a big name band like, I talked to, Chris Connolly the other day, for the Joy Thieves one
Yeah.
I just wrote. And, from the top all the way down to the bottom, everybody has the same imposter syndrome that we're all dealing with as artists. And to hear it from some of those bands that I was just really, really into, that, Ken, I was having a rough day, and I read your interview or your review, and that made me remember why this matters to me. And I had a lot of people say things like that. And it is the type of feeling that shows you why this is important and matters, to talk to bands, to talk to other people about music that you love, or art, or anything that you love, but just to talk to people about it and promote it in this day and age, because we are all on this sinking goth industrial ship together, and it's going down, and we've all got buckets, and we can all do something to bail water out for each other, and that matters.
That's actually a really good metaphor, because not necessarily to say that any scene that anyone's going to be involved in is sinking, but that it could sink at any time. And so,
Yeah,
really, what you're doing, you know, if you're creating something for whatever scene, whether you're doing it as like art for television shows that you like, or music for
yeah,
any scene, or any of those things, it you're not just creating something for yourself. If you want to put it out there and build a community, it's a holding action against oblivion, against entropy.
yeah. And today, more than it ever has in the world, it matters so much now. I mean, it may seem like a little thing that you share one of our reviews about a band that you liked, or just share their page and some words of your own about why you think this is cool or why you like that. Even if you're only getting seen by 20 people, the way the internet works now and social media works now, it's kind of like you said, it's entropy. It grows upon itself. Like, one of those 20 people becomes a fan, and then they tell 20 other people who tell, you know, 50 other people who, and it just grows that way. And it really does make all the difference in the world. Where word of mouth, to a point, say back in the 90s, or zines, or, review web pages back then, or things, I mean, had that effect to a point, but it was much more on a localized level, where people underestimate just how big a reach and an impact worldwide they can have, even if they're, not pretending to be a fake music journalist like me.
There's that imposter syndrome coming out.
There it is. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that's imposter syndrome. Look, I think I'm good at what I do, but I don't consider it journalism. You know, I am a guy who gets drunk at 1 a.m. and writes love letters to bands that he loves
So
and spews them out into the world. But I don't have any pretending to be subjective about it. I write about the bands I love and just write about why I love them, and that's what I do. I
okay,
don't try and report on the news.
but the thing is, you can say that you're not a real journalist, but the day that, for instance, my DJing and my radio show Subculture Shock got chosen as like one of your hot DJs list.
Yeah.
That was like I bragged to all my friends, like, hey, soundsandshadows.com called me one of the hot DJs, and so it was a big deal because you're not just writing these things. At some point, you transitioned from just reviews that you're writing on Facebook to no, now it's got a name. It's got a logo. It's got its own website. It's got its own Facebook group. And it just kind of became its thing. It became this thing, and it's real now. It's professional, whether or not like you feel
It's
whether or not you
no,
feel like it
you're dead
is.
on right. Yeah, no, you're dead on right. It's true. And I've had some wake up calls on that too, where, some news story or something has happened in the goth scene. And I'm dealing with it in my own way and not thinking about it. But again, I just don't always think of Sounds and Shadows in those terms as like a place other people go for news or anything like that. And people were asking me about where I stand on this or where I stand. And I'm like, why are you asking? Who the hell cares what I think? Like, who am I in this? But yeah, at a certain point, I had to come to grips with the fact that, well, Ken, you crapped this fireball into the world. And now that it's here, you have some responsibility and have to answer for it too. So,
Yeah. So, and that gives me a couple things to jump on. That's the thing I love about this conversation is I'm kind of making notes of like go back to this, but then we keep going. So it's almost like we're talking the whole point of this panel is like building an online brand, building and maintaining it, and it sounds like the building of it was just I'm gonna do this thing, and then I'm gonna do this thing, and then I'm going to do this thing. And oh, now I need a place to collect all these things, so let's call it this name. Let's put it
yeah.
on this website. Oh, the website looks a little bare. Let's make a logo for it.
Mm-hmm. I
And it
mean, and that's another thing too. When you talk about the logo or anything else, because of these relationships I started to form, like I did one of those early interviews that I did with, I found this band called Go Fight. And
love them.
I, I just heard them and I'm like, this is the coolest crap I have heard in forever. I think it was the song Chemical that I
Yeah,
heard first.
that was
And
that
I
was
was
where
like,
I called them Fundustrial.
yes, I was just blown away. And I'm like, this is so awesome. So I didn't know anything about him. I reached out to some dude in Chicago and was like, I love this band. You're amazing. I'd love to do an interview with you and kind of talk more about it. So I got talking with them. And right before I was sent over the interview questions, I was again trying to be a serious journalist. So I'm going to do some research on it. So I Google searched their name and looked through some of this, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is Jim Marcus from Die Warsaw and Sister Machine Gun. And I was like, and it happened literally minutes right before I was getting ready to do the interview. And that, some of this was coming into play. And I'm like, oh, holy crap, wow. So I've been IMing back and forth, talking to Jim for a while, and finally I'm like, oh my God, I just realized who you are. And now it's weird because I used to go see you when I was like 16 and thought you were the coolest thing in the universe. And it's Jim, just so laid back and so humble about everything that they do. And we just kept having a great conversation then, but I was just like jaw dropped, like this is happening. And so I put a post on Facebook when I had the name Sounds and Shadows and just said, hey, do I know anybody that does like logo design or anything. And I had a couple people answer. Now I know Jim does this professionally, for like everything from banks to, a recording company. I mean, he does very good logo design, some of the best in the world, and is, well known for it. But I can't afford that, especially for a hobby. And I was kind of just like, I remember we were in the recording studio and I was there with Colin and we were working on something, and he reached out and he was like, "Hey Ken, that's what I do." And I was like, "I do know that's what you do. I also know the level that you do it on and that I probably can't afford it, but you're awesome." And he said, "Well, Ken, we'll figure something out. We'll work it out. I mean, you're my friend." And I had this moment where I look over to Colin. I must have looked like white as a sheet. And Colin, looks at me and says, "What is it?" I'm like, "Dude, me and Jim Marcus are friends." and he just started laughing. And so Jim designed that Sounds and Shadows logo at first, which is absolutely amazing. And he really saved me on it because the way I described it at first, I could have really got myself in trouble. And Jim pulled it off and made it perfect, because it occurred to me that I was using the letters S and S in a logo. And I'm like, yeah, and I just think, kind of gothy with like a black background or something. Would that be? And he goes, "No, that wouldn't be cool, Ken. That would not be cool at all. That would in fact be very bad." And I'm like, "Oh, you are, that is not a thing I thought about. Thank God you're good at logos, because that would have gone very poorly." There's a little exclusive behind the scenes Sounds and Shadows for you.
So the neat thing about this, let me. So you all watching at home, it can sound like we're starting to throw out a lot of big names, and I can see certain people that are just getting started, kind of just glossing over and going, "Oh, there's no way I could do that," and that's not true, because the story that we've got here is that Ken just started doing stuff and then would talk to the people that liked his stuff and would talk to the people that he reviewed, and it's just a matter. I sat here going like, wait. You helped inspire Twin Tribes, but Twin Tribes wasn't Twin Tribes at the time. They were
Sure.
just
They were on their way.
they were on their way,
They were
yeah.
still up and coming.
But that means that like all of these people, your friends that you all sit around and draw art together and then post it on your Tumblr or your DeviantArt page or whatever. That could be the next community of big artists.
It most assuredly could. It's happening all the time. I think that's another thing too. Is I was talking with Hyde, that's a writer and isn't a moderator in the Sounds and Shadows group, and it's just there's just so much now. It's not like back in the '90s where you had to pay to get into a $50,000 studio to record anything. A lot of people can reasonably have a home studio, do their own thing, and not have a record label telling you what to do. Just put out whatever the music in your heart is. But the other thing that means is there's just an ocean of material worth listening to out there. And how do you sift through all of it? It just is coming at you in waves all the time. And so there's always going to be someone worthwhile that's really great that hasn't been discovered yet. And let me tell you, there is no better feeling than knowing that you were the person who heard this, had it touch you, and then tell people about it, and kind of being on the ground floor on it. It's so rewarding. I really don't have a way to describe how meaningful it is when that happens.
That actually ties into a comment from chat right now. DJ Kelly A. Saying it's weird how time affects things. I do basically the same thing now that I did in 1996, but there are people who look up to me just because they were 16 when they first heard me.
Yes, and shout out to Kelly, who I love dearly and is one of my favorite DJs out there, and just does a great job promoting, and has been for, like she just said, a long time, and been important to the scene. I think that's 100% true, because goth industrial culture really is so tied to nostalgia. I mean, I guess that's true for everybody,
Oh,
every
everything.
scene, but for sure, goth culture, I think even more, has always been obsessed with the past. And there really is an importance to me as, somebody who's kind of a elder goth, um, to be open and bringing other people, younger people into this scene and accepting of it, because you do get a certain amount of street cred from how long you've been in the thing. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but it's a reality.
So the thing that kind of makes me think of then is let's take it from the other side. We've talked about how you got started and how you were just kind of putting your stuff out there, but now because you've just kept doing it over and over again, and you've been. It sounds like first of all the steps have been one, make your art whatever it is. Two,
Mm-hmm.
put it out there however you can. You started on just Facebook posts, but just keep doing it. And three, when people connect with you about that art, be it your inspirations or people that just found it, connect with them, talk with them about it, build relationships on it. So along those, yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I would say that is the best formula to get started when we're talking about building a brand.
Okay, so now let's look at it from the other side about where your brand is right now. Before we get into the maintaining aspect of it, let's continue on the starting, but from the opposite. You're now sounds and shadows, all right, and
Okay.
whether you recognize it or not, kind of like Kelly said, you have an importance now because people have recognized that you're writing about the stuff, and they now give your voice a little bit of an authority.
Sure.
So if a band or artists wants to come to you and be like, "Hey, uh, can you help us promote our stuff?" If someone if an up and coming artist wants to make that connection with you, what's the best way to go about it? What makes those
Sure.
connections better or worse for you?
So, I mean, I think that everybody who does reviews or anything like this, I was just talking with Hyde about this too, is guilty of this. I look, it's hard when you have 5,000 things coming into your inbox a month, right? To sift through everything there of what's going to get noticed.
Yeah.
So I'm a human being. What do I tend to notice first? People who I know, people who I talk to. And I don't think it's hard to know me or most other reviewers or out there. It's going and commenting on their stuff so they know who you are. It's sharing their stuff so they know who you are. It's sending them a DM to say, "Hey, what's going on, Ken? Like, how are you doing? Hey, I have a new thing that's coming out in a couple weeks, and here's a Bandcamp code for it. And I was hoping that you'd give it a listen and let me know what you think." And it's just talking and being accessible like that. And I know that that's effort, right? When it comes to say, because you're going to send it to me, you're going to send it to, Obscure Undead, you're going to say, I mean, there's, a bunch of us out there, and you're sending it to DJs and doing the same. But I guess it really comes down to, yeah, that takes effort and that takes spoons to do. But at the same time, if what you care about is getting it in front of people and getting this feedback, that's the best way to do it. And I think the other side is true too. It really is a razor's edge, right? If you do that too much, like you're DMing me like 20 times in a month, I'm going to be, whoa there. That's a lot. That's really intense. But it's just kind of like any relationships that you have. You need to kind of build it and talk in a organic natural progression, because I want to feel like you're sharing this music with me and I'm listening to it, not I am your sales outlet.
So that's
I treat me like a human, because I am. And I'm just going to naturally, if what you're putting out is good, I'm going to love it all the more if I have a human interaction with you about a music that I like anyway.
I think that's the big thing there. All right, and I'm glad that you said that because I was thinking that in my head. Uh, you were some of the advice that you were giving is the advice that we as artists hear all the time. Again, no matter what art you're doing, is just get your stuff out there, send it to people, just keep sending it to people. But
Yeah,
you added a very important step to it. Send it out to other people, but be a goddamn human being about it.
yeah.
Like they like
Yeah, don't make me feel like you copied and pasted me a chain letter you sent to 500 other people, because frankly, if I can only listen to 10 things in a day, in my free time, I'm going to listen to the 10 from the people I know first, rather than something that looks like a chain letter. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. Sometimes I just find things on their own that people don't even send me. But I gotta say, the the thing I'm going to listen to first is the thing that the person I know sent me.
So along those lines, I don't think it's wrong at all because what you're asking for is some reciprocation. Is your because how do you get to know people? You just communicate with them regularly. If we sit and we think about all the different friends that we have, they're just the people that we hung out with regularly. You know, the
Yeah,
people that we would see, like if you've got friends in the goth scene, you probably are friends with them because you saw them every week at the local club night. You talk, say, hey, how's it going? Have a couple beers together or whatever, and maybe
yeah,
do things outside the event too. And so what you're asking for online is, hey, send me your stuff, but if you're also commenting on the things that I post, if you're just having random discussions in Sounds and Shadows, if I'm seeing your name regularly and we're talking about stuff other than just the thing you're trying to promote, I'm more likely to pay attention to the thing you're trying to promote.
yeah. And let's add another caveat to that, not just yourself. I mean, Pat, if you reach out to me, we know each other pretty well
Yeah.
and talk fairly regular, and you say, hey, I would like you to come on this con that I'm doing, I'd say, sure, Pat, how can I help?
Yeah.
But if beyond that you said, Ken, I just heard this new band that's just phenomenal called Dread Risks, and I need
Who
you
is
to.
phenomenal. Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
And I need you to give it a spin. I respect you as your ability as a DJ the same way I'm doing to sift through the wheat from the shaft and find it. So if you send that to me and I know you, that again, even though it wasn't, say, Dread Risks who sent it to me, it's bumped up to the top of my, I need to put this in my rotation today
we
because Pat
actually
sent it.
we actually had that conversation a while ago, and I won't name the band because your initial comment was, "Hey, every time I have listened to something from this band, I think they're very well accomplished musicians, but I just don't like it." And I said, "Okay, but listen to these three songs on this new
Yeah,
release here." And that's a thing that you might not think about. People out there that are making art is that the more people you send it to and the more relationships that you create, the more they're likely to talk to each other. A good example
exactly.
about that is the new unit code machine. I actually hadn't gotten to it yet, and 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 yet I started seeing you post about it, Matt Finale post about it,
Yeah,
Adra post about it, and I was like, okay, obviously all of these people whose opinions I respect find it cool. I'm gonna check it out.
right. And by the way, that album is really absurdly good. You need to go listen to
Oh no,
that.
I have now. Like it's done. I finally got off my ass and did it, but it was because so many other people. And I think that's the thing is that you need to not just get your work out there. What you're saying is you need to also generate excitement for your work.
Right. And I think part of that too is that's one of the reasons I think Sounds and Shadows, especially in the beginning when it was getting rolling, did well, is that you get, I think anybody who sees me or talks to me, it's not an online persona. I really am just this excitable goth Saint Bernard that just bounds through life, licking up the glorious goth ice cream cone, and I really am just this geeked. And when I write, that's how I write too. I don't really, if I'm not into something, I just don't talk about it or write about it, because I don't have the energy for that, because I have too many things I am excited about.
Right.
And I think that's part of what was contagious in the beginning, was just me saying, oh my God, like, you have to hear this right now. Just listen. This made me feel like this. This made me feel like this. Bah. Like, everyone should really understand. And I think when you talk about something online, building your brand, and that could be someone else's stuff, but it can be yourself too. If you come at it with that kind of an excitement or energy, it's going to be contagious and make other people interested in that. And frankly, I think that a lot of people, when they're reading music reviews, aren't really into hearing, oh, I listened to this 5 times and it sucks. Like, I mean, people aren't interested in that kind of energy. And there's so much out there that's good. They want to hear about something that made you feel something and excited you. And I think that's what people really hunger for when it's talking about, whether you're talking about your own music or art or someone else's. They want to hear what has you fired up and why. And if you can produce content like that, that's what people are going to be drawn to. Now that they're drawn to you, and kind of like you said, they're paying attention to your voice, now you have the ability to dig a little deeper and find some of those fringe, strange cuts that, maybe you had to get yourself excited for, because it took a few listens, because there was something cerebral happening there and outside of the norm. And when you can shine a light on something like that, again, it's such an amazing, glorious feeling, because you feel like you shared something that maybe wouldn't have been heard otherwise.
So that gives me more things that I want to talk about. But before we move on, one last thing I think on this topic, question from the chat, again from Kelly A. Do you feel ever overloaded? There are bands right now that are like releasing one single a month, and just
Mm-hmm.
so are just constantly releasing stuff over and over and over again. And on the one hand, that's one way to do it, to constantly keep your name out there by
Sure.
continually releasing stuff. Do you ever feel overloaded by those bands though, as a reviewer?
You know, Not particularly. Um, I think it's just like anything else. Now, sometimes do I write about every single that,
Mm-hmm.
even a band that's a friend of mine that I like and it puts out? No, because I have to keep cycling through and looking for new things and trying to find new fringes. But that's the world that we're in right now, right? That's Spotify. That's streaming. That's how things are. I mean, the day of the album is not the same as it was in the 90s. For kids like me in the 90s growing up, I loved having friends over and taking out a tape or an album or a CD of some new band and sitting down listening to the whole thing, and we would just talk about it. And
Yeah,
that was our activity for the night. And I don't think that happens as much anymore. People are much more
that
bubble.
explains why you like professional fan B.
Yes, yeah, I love it. I love the format. And it does. It has that same feeling as sitting down with a friend and just hearing everything or talking about a record. And so but I do think that if you really want to be commercially successful, that releasing singles technique is what works right now. And I don't know whether that's better or worse, but it's the world right now. Like, take Daniel Graves, is somebody, Aesthetic Perfection, that I think has really, really used that technique effectively. And it's working 100%, and there are a lot of people, a lot of fans out there of his that get excited for the build up, the discussion, the talk for each one of these new videos, and then the single release. And that's cool. I think it also adds a lot of freedom to the fact that he can totally change directions on the concept of what he's writing about, because it's just one song. So, like, this is what was in my head today. and this is what I'm releasing a single about. And maybe 30 days from now, it's a totally different thing that he's moved on to. And that's great. But I also love when bands take the time to take one cohesive idea and tie 10 songs to a very in-depth discussion and release that as an album. So I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other, but I do think that I approach them differently as a reviewer. Whereas I'd be much more likely to throw a quick blurb about Daniel's new single or make it song of the day or something like that. Whereas if Antipole puts out a new 11 song album, well, I'm probably going to give that its own review and write something much more in depth and go through. I guess it's kind of giving back the same amount of energy put in, if that makes any sense.
No, it does because it's the same amount of energy in both places, but one of them it's interspersed over a once a month, whereas the other one it's like it's all concentrated immediately.
Exactly.
And I feel like therefore though what you're kind of saying, we in order to pull this back out into not just goth industrial music but just any brand as a whole, that's kind of the difference between, like, for instance, artists or writers um, doing little blurbs a day or like a photo a day or a drawing a day, or if you're a comic
Yeah,
strip, a comic a day, versus people that just hold off until the product is finished and then put the whole product out at once. and
sure.
and
A trade.
coincidentally, yeah, and coincidentally, that's kind of what you do, where like you'll have little blurbs, songs of the day and stuff on Sounds and Shadows, and then the actual articles, which take weeks, sometimes even months to put together,
Yeah,
become like your trade,
right,
your larger
exactly.
piece. So, is there a difference in the way that you will promote each of those things?
I don't think, I mean, I guess to a point in the sense that, you're just talking about one song on one day and kind of going to it. Whereas if I do a piece, I'm going to try and really share that around to a lot of other groups and things like that. But a lot of times I'll write a piece that will be made up of 10 or 15 things I was listening to or albums, but they might have been song of the day too,
Okay.
3 weeks ago. But now I've gotten around to putting some of those thoughts and words into a bigger piece. I think that's another tip I would give for anybody who's looking to do a music review page or something like that, is somewhere along the way, I learned the value between doing one piece for a particular artist that was just about one album and doing it. Like I did one for Actors recently, because that was a big deal. I think that album is going to be a game changer. And I listened to it a ton and I talked with Jason a ton about what was going on and asked a lot of questions and building into it. So then I did a very comprehensive piece where I wrote something about every single song. Um, and the Actors, though, already have a bit of an audience. So I think my article maybe could give them more audience, but also to the audience they have, it builds excitement for it.
Right.
Whereas I found the value too in doing like 15 bands where maybe you put 5 more established, bigger name bands that you review in like a 1 paragraph blurb, but then also have 10 bands that are more unknown, and then share and link in Twitter and Facebook and everything else all the bands that you did. So the bigger name bands are adding attention to the unknown bands, and the smaller bands sharing it are giving more street cred and maybe drawing in fans that hadn't listened to maybe somebody like the Actors or something that was more mainstream than what they usually listen to. And so there's a synergy and they're building it for each other. And once I kind of started to learn the amount of time to spend on each, how many to roll out during the course of a month, that's when you start to kind of hone a craft towards promoting other people's stuff.
And
And
promoting your own stuff.
and exactly.
Yeah.
all the bands then are sharing sounds and shadows. And so it's linking back to you then too, and giving you both sides of it, both a more established band saying, here's somebody who digs deeper and like, writes
Hmm.
more about our album, and younger bands saying, hey, this is somebody who's reaching out and writing about us when not many other people are writing about us, and finding that benefit on both sides of the equation.
Everything that you say, it always seems to come back to community building and just like interacting
That's
with
it.
people. Yeah.
That's that is everything. I mean, I think the other parts of it, the other biggest tip I would give is your content has to be good. And so I think that's the other big part of it is I don't think, like I said, I don't write well from a grammar and constructive writing standpoint.
So
I
so what makes your
wrote about
content
like
good?
a poem. Well, but what I'm saying is it has to be true.
There
Maybe
we
rather
go.
than good, that's a better word. It has to
To
be
be
true.
true, which I think is
People are
a
smart.
that's so
Bands are
important
smart.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people just focus on the good, but what does good mean? And you nailed it. Like people like your work because it's true.
Right. I think that's the big thing. And so you can build an audience if what you're writing, you really believe it and you care about it, and this band or your band or whatever it is important to you. And people can feel that genuine tone in what you're saying. And if you try too hard, I think, to make it, like I said, all those 5,000 quick press kit that looks like the other 4,999 press kits, um, you can see that too. That this reads like a sales brochure. And my advice is build yourself by speaking from the heart and telling who you are and being genuine. There'll be plenty of time once people know who you are from doing that to have a more clear cut professional uh, spam blast.
No, I think that's a really good point. When artists, eventually get big enough to where they just don't have time to reach out to every single reviewer or every
Yeah.
single
Or you
then
can hire someone to do that.
exactly.
Get a PR company. Yeah,
But when you're starting, in order to generate that interest, it has to be real more than professional.
it does. It,
Yeah.
it does. It matters to me. It matters much more that if someone hits me with something that feels genuine and I'm like, okay, yeah, that all right, that sounds cool the way they describe that. Let me click this link. And then you're either going to get me or you're not going to get me. And I don't think that should be a big deal one way or the other to an artist. I was, it's funny, I must have had a bigger talk than I thought with Hyde today, but I feel like I hit on a lot of these subjects. Or someone posted in the Facebook group a little while ago, what's the best way? And I said, sending me a hello and a Bandcamp link. And they said, yeah, but we only, can send out 100 Bandcamp links for a particular project. And I said, I hear that, but at the same time, I don't need you to hit me with every single release that you have with a Bandcamp link. I need you to get my attention once. And once you're on my radar, I'm going to be looking for everything you do. And I think that's one of the biggest things that bands could be doing is focusing on having a really great interaction the first time they reach out to a reviewer or a DJ or another band or anything like that, and less time with constant influx of material. Once you've made me a fan, I'm your fan, and I'm going to be looking for you.
So we've done a lot on the building. And again, Ken, this is fantastic advice and also just great stories. So thank you for
Yeah.
participating in this. We've still got some time left, so let's talk about maintaining.
Okay.
because this is something that I've mentioned to you before, that I'm always amazed. You have a full-time job.
I do.
Yeah, I have a full-time job, and yet it seems like you are always posting and always making stuff, and so
I
um
don't sleep.
yeah, so you don't sleep. Okay. So how do you do it? How do you manage to continue to push yourself out there and make art while not losing your goddamn mind?
Well, sometimes I do lose my mind,
Okay.
but but I think the question that you're asking is, I don't think I could not do it at
Okay.
this point. Sounds and Shadows, Amaranth, all of it is is my special time for me. That it's my fuel. It's what matters. I get through my 9 to 5 job, which is a good job and I like it, but it's not what fills my jets. Doing this, getting to spend time with Rachel, my cat's belly, these are the things that fuel my jets. And Sounds and Shadows is one of those, or Amaranth is one of those. And so I make time for those things because they matter to me. And again, I think that goes back to the why does this work? And so how do you continue doing it? If you're constantly still excited and fired up when you find a new band, if you're have the weird kink that, like, when a cool band that you love sends you uh, a song that they did before anybody else heard it, and you're just like, hipster Ken, get an IPA out because twirl your ironic mustache, my friend, because you were about to hear something nobody else has heard before. And that's what gets you fired up. That's what's going to give you the energy and strength to keep doing this and keep writing. And a band is the same way. Like, if you're putting out, I said this to somebody the other day too. For Amaranth, I don't really care that much. I mean, we've had some reviews and good ones, which is awesome. And I love the music that I make, and that's awesome. But the real truth is, I don't really care whether I would be on a chart, or like the, Deutschland charts. People were talking about that on the group the other day. I care about when, like, just that, like, Joel and Luis hear one of my songs, or Carl, or Jason, or you, or DJs that I really value their musical taste and opinion. When they tell me that it's a good song, that's what fills me up. And I guess that makes sense, because that's kind of going back, that what I'm giving back maybe to a lot of those bands, when I write about them. And so it's reciprocal both ways. But to me, the opinions of people who I know music mean more than whether we sell 5,000 copies of something, which will never
You never know.
happen. Who knows? But
Yeah.
it seems much more likely that I would be able to continue judging my self-worth as a artist and musician by people I care about their opinions telling me that it has value, and me, who I care about my opinion, telling myself it has value. And I think once you can do that, then the the other people will come on their own, because that's where the buzz is built from, is kind of those opinions that, like you said, when you heard me and Matt and a few other people talk about the unit code, that's what said to you, ooh, I need to get on board with this right now.
Yeah.
And I think that happens organically when you believe in yourself, and you have good relationships with people whose opinions you value.
It's interesting. Like the maintaining is just an extension of the building. It sounds like I'm sitting here like, gosh, how do you find time for all this? And you're like, well, because it regenerates me. Like
I think
it's not a spoon drain. If anything, it's a spoon investment. Maybe you're spending some
yeah.
spoons to do it, and you get a bunch back from doing it.
But the other thing, and we kind of touched on this, you and I, in a conversation previously, that you also, especially once you get built in this, it does cost more and more once you've built it up. And like I said to you before, certain days where I'm like, dude, I cannot be the voice of goth for you right now. I have my own stuff going on in life. And please just don't ask me about this right now because I don't have it. More and more stuff like that comes up, or somebody's like, hey, I sent this to you 3 weeks ago. Have you listened to it yet? And you're like, oh, I haven't. I got distracted, I got busy, I got life happening, but I'll listen to it, and I'll get to that. And remembering not to burn yourself out in this too is so important, because it costs. Anything you love in life is going to cost. And being able to tell yourself it's okay to turn your phone off, to shut this off, to not, and I've done it before. Like, I've publicly posted stuff on the Sounds and Shadows group. Look, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do anything this month. I'm not going to write anything. I'll get back to all of you. I promise. I love you. I care about you, but I don't have it right now. And frankly, if I try and write what I'm good at, which is being excited about stuff, when I can't find the excitement in life, it'll sound fake. And that's, again, people can tell the difference. And the moment you start doing that is the moment that people stop looking at Sounds and Shadows as a source for music to be excited about, right? I mean, I have to have that in my voice. And if it's not there, don't try and force it, because it's not there. And I think the same is true for writing music too, or pretty much anything you do in life.
Yeah, just it sounds like what you're saying is like the very first thing, we talked about the very first thing you do is to do the thing, to make the art, whether it's a review page or the music itself, or like drawings or whatever. But it
Or a
sounds like,
DJ stream.
yeah,
Yeah.
or a DJ stream. Thank you. But it sounds like the step before that, almost the step zero, is make sure you're passionate about whatever you're going to create. And if
If
it's
all you're passionate about is being famous, or popping crystal in a stretch navigator, like, you're not going to be able to convince anyone else that you care about something beyond that. And you have to believe in whatever it is that you're doing for the reason that you care about Otherwise, people will see right through. It's always been true, I think.
This is so touching, honestly. No, I mean that, like, there, because I will fully admit that I set this panel up as like, all right, so what are some tips to organize myself? And I was like, all of that falls by the wayside as long as you give a damn. Like,
Yep.
all of the rest of that stuff will come, and maybe, to take that interpretation further, tell me if I'm off base here. Maybe if you don't have that, like, push, maybe the thing that you'd rather do when you get home is sit and play video games or something. That's not bad either. You're not less of a person because you're not creating and promoting your art.
And heck, even if you want to stream video games,
You
that's a
should.
huge thing. Heck, I'm really, really into canning, Pat. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that,
No.
but I'm deeply into canning food. Like, you see
Okay.
my food post and know I like it,
Yeah.
but like, it's a particular aspect of it.
Okay.
And like, every year I go out and try 20 recipes for pickles, and we'll make these pickles. And I'm really, really into it. And if I didn't have so many things going, I would love to do like a goth canning web series,
All right.
or people said to me, my food, people would love to, see me do like a recipe show or something like that. And it's
PJCon 2022. You're going to can something.
there you go.
All right?
There's, but I think that it doesn't matter what it is that you're into. The thing that will be most successful if you're trying to build content is just if people can feel your passion for it. If
So
you're really into canning, do a webcast about canning. And there are mofos out there in the world that are as nuts about canning as you. And I'm one of them. And I would watch your show.
okay, so this has been pretty positive, but there is one thing that I definitely want to touch on before we finish up, and that's that it doesn't always go that way. Like I'm sure there have been times where like you've worked really hard on a piece and you've released it and it just didn't get the response that you thought it would, or like
Sure.
someone makes they make a bunch of canning videos and there's one canning video that nobody watches, or like you just
Why does
feel
nobody care about my coconut curry cauliflower
I
pickled?
care.
It's so good.
So what do you do in that moment where maybe you made a mistake and you looked at the numbers of people that were watching it instead of just being happy with what you were doing, and so now you feel kind of low about yourself? How do you keep going?
I think it's just like anything else in life. You're always going to have stuff that misses or F ups, or whether it's you're writing a song. I mean, heck, most good artists will tell you for every 10-song album, you left 30 songs on the floor, you know? And I think I've had interviews before that were easier than others, that I felt like the conversation didn't click as well, but you know what? It doesn't change the fact of why you were doing it in the first place. And I think you could have three flops in a row, of something you wrote or something you did or what have you. But that one moment, like we talked about, where, you know, Luis and Joel of Twin Tribes say, hey, your review really mattered to me, is enough to fire you up through 10 more misses, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's always going to be, you just offset it with the things that go well. And if your heart's in it, honestly, and you're reaching out and genuine to other people that care about the same kind of uh, art or music or pickles or whatever it is as you are, you're always going to find a connection in that. In today's world, where it can sometimes feel so hard to have a connection with, the pandemic and everyone being in their houses from screens, those things matter so much, and they'll be enough to fuel you. They really will if you let them.
Wow. Ken, this has been an absolute treat. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we end the panel?
I think just right now, if I was to say one thing that I see so much in the page, is bands frustrated that how many, it seems they're never the ones getting noticed or never the ones getting reviewed. And I know how that feels. I'm in it with you. And if I think one thing would really help and change that, is that currently there is a 5 to 1 million review page to band ratio. And it's not always easy to think about just how hard that makes it to get noticed by one of the 5 when you're one of the million. And if there's anything that has propelled Amaranth's notoriety, our connection to other big bands, our opportunities, everything else, it's me running this review page. And I suggest to everyone out there, whether it's you go through the thing to run one yourself, whether you join up as a writer, we're always looking for writers over at Sounds and Shadows, whether it's making YouTube videos, whether it's just sharing and then writing 2 sentences about, I think this band's album kicks butt and here's why. It will make all the difference in the world to you. And you will find, as you lift others up, that you're getting noticed and lifted up yourself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So thank you very much, Ken, for being a part of PJCon. This was just something that I threw together mostly for Jasper because he was really looking forward to con, and then we couldn't go. And so it's really mattered to me that friends that I reached out to were willing to help make this a big real deal.
Always, my friend. It was a pleasure. It's always great talking to you.
And thanks for everyone who's watching either now or with Ken's permission, of course, I'll put this up on YouTube.
Sure way.
Yeah, awesome. So whether you're watching this live or recorded, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for questions in chat, especially DJ Kelly A, giving us all giving me a lot to talk about when I would start to think, oh, what am I going to ask next? And so coming up, PJCon, there might be some videos from the private party tonight, and otherwise tomorrow we've got making the best of your public library, finding out all the resources that you might not realize your own local library has with Bishop Clark at that's going to be at noon, and then at 6 p.m. Fantastic one on the difference between bystanders and allies when it comes to minorities, be it ethnic, racial, or like gender, sexual minorities, and also abuse in various scenes, and how to make sure that you're being an ally and not just a bystander. So that's tomorrow at 6. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you for more PJ Con later tonight, maybe, and definitely tomorrow.
Bye. Keep it dark, yo.